Hi, everybody. Dan Illman, Ashley Mailloux, kicking off a 20-cent pick five on a really nice Saturday afternoon card at Woodbine. Let's throw up the field for race number 6. This is the Grade 3 Selene. 3-year-old fillies, $150,000 is the purse, and we're going a mile and a 16th on the Tapeta surface. Trainer Mark Cassie has 3 talented fillies in this race, including your favorite, the 7, Witwatersrand, who was so impressive last time out, returning from South Florida.
She was very impressive. Obviously, not the way that they hoped maybe the Florida Oaks had gone for her. But listen, the way she kind of returned after that bit of a freshening, really raced well at the 7/8 distance. And just knowing what she's been able to do around 2 turns in the past, I think she's definitely deserving of favoritism here on the morning line.
Let's throw up our time form U.S. pace projector. The number 1 Sabatini figures to take advantage of her inside post as she stretches out in distance. I'd expect her to be forwardly placed, as well as another stretch out sprinter, the 4 Red Samurai. That could be good news for the closers if these 2 stretch outs have trouble rating in the early stages.
Absolutely. And I think Red Samurai, just seeing what she's been able to do so far, even at the 7/8, she wasn't necessarily as forward as we've seen her in the past, but I do think she'll be forward against this bunch. You mentioned the one on the rail. She's shown a fair bit of early foot. So I'm not sure how hot the pace really will be going a mile and a 16th, especially over this surface, but I do think it'll be honest with this group.
There's always been a little bit of buzz surrounding the number 1 Sabatini. She sold for $625,000 as a 2-year-old in training. And here's Sabatini finishing second in her most recent start against Witwatersrand. She ran well in this race, but you see the winner is just kind of cruising right by her.
Yeah, she runs well, I think, all in all. We know how good the winner is, and we know what her resume looked like as a 2-year-old filly. But, look at Sabatini. She's only had those 3 starts under her belt. She was able to graduate against stakes competition in her second career start. And I think for her, we've only seen her as a 3-year-old. And I think she's done everything right to this point. Her last 2, they've been both solid efforts. And you talked about the purchase price, a lot of money for a Florida bred.
Certainly is. And this one looked really good on opening day, winning the Star Shoot, the race you were talking about. As a second out maiden, the runner-up came back and won the Miss Preakness on dirt at Pimlico. So that's a salty field. And I think with this pedigree, you can expect her to get a mile and a 16th. Shaman's Girl is up next. She won her debut against Stakes Company in her one and only start last year. Then they tried to the wide country down at Laurel on dirt. That didn't work out. Then they ran her in the Fury last time out. That didn't necessarily work out. I have a feeling, though, looking at her pedigree, and I got to look at her down at Laurel, I think she wants 2 turns.
I think so too. And I really liked her debut. I think the tough part is looking at her last 2. They've tried different things and it really hasn't worked. But you talked about her pedigree. If you're looking at Adena Springs, this is sort of the regal pedigree, right? With Gingerbread on the bottom, Shaman Ghost on the top, both of which were very respective horses in their own right. And I'm curious to see her around 2 turns. She's certainly going to be cold on the tote board in this race, just looking at some other names in here. But I think if you're curious, maybe you take a wait and see approach and see how she does and then kind of gauge what you do in her next start.
One of the 3 Cassie trained horses up next. That's the number 3 Creval d'Oro. We're going to take a look at her race on June the 15th. Now, this race is on turf. It's a 2 life allowance race. I really like the way she finished this off. It's not like there was a ton of pace. They went 46 and 1 to the half. She still has some work to do, but actually, once she gets some clear sailing, she fires.
She does, and this was nice to see her back in the winner's circle. It did take her a little bit to graduate. We saw her several times with very similar performances where she was picking up minor checks, and then to see her now, she's won 2 of her last 3, or only poor efforts, similarly to another in here, was in the Florida Oaks. So I really liked the trip that she got. I liked that she was able to sit further off of it than she did in her maiden score. And I guess the big question, Dan, when you look at her, is the surface. She's going to have to race on the synthetic, but obviously her turf form is strong enough.
At least her dam won a couple of times on the synthetic, so that maybe gives some hope. And 8 to 1's a fair price off that very likable victory. Red Samurai's up next. Let's take a look at Red Samurai's run where she finishes second on June the 6th. This is the Fury Stakes going 7/8 of a mile. And unlike in her prior races, they tried to rate her and have her come from off for the pace. And it worked out pretty well. She comes with a decent run. She's just no match for a horse that wired the field.
Yeah, Olivia Rose, much the best here. And I think the big thing that I look at this field with Red Samurai and kind of look at her, you pointed out, they had her do something different. And she's certainly been stronger in her 2 showings as a 3-year-old than she was as a 2-year-old. It looked like she kind of chased the pace and weakened in a lot of those races. And yes, maybe she picked up some shares, but I like that, she has that gate to wire win, but they tried something different. And I think that's going to show maybe her development where she progresses. And Very curious to see, though, as we kind of showed the time, form, pace projections, will she be forward once again, especially on the stretch out?
Although Golden Ghost's last three races don't look strong on paper, they were all on turf. And if you go back to her one and only synthetic race down at Gulfstream Park, it was a strong victory in a first level allowance. Maybe she's just a synthetic horse in waiting, and she's been facing some pretty tough company. That grade three Soaring Softly in New York, a strong field. One of the also rans has immediately come back to win with a 75 buyer.
Interesting to see how she's been handled with the stakes races at Gulfstream Park on the turf. And then you mentioned they did send her to New York. And to me, that makes me think that her connections think that there's something there, that being DJ Stable and Mark Casse. And they've been tough groups, as you've mentioned. So I'm curious to see her get back on the synthetic. You talked about the race at Gulfstream Park. I thought it was a good effort where she sat just off the pace and kind of maybe sometimes the position that you want on the Tapeta at Gulfstream Park. So we'll see what she can do here. And, I think she's intriguing, probably out of the price horses if you're looking for one.
The 6 is Waves of Mischief. She's a very lightly raced daughter of Super Stallion Into Mischief. Parlayed a good trip into a win in her debut at Keeneland, but it's never easy to win going 2 turns, and she took a lot of money in a big field. The word was out. Second time out, they ran her in the Hilltop, and I thought all in all, against the quality of competition she faced that day, she ran pretty well.
Yeah, when you look at the race, obviously she feels pretty. Draw is clear here as we take a look at the replay. And it kind of becomes a strung out field. But I think the big thing is she is clear of the horses behind her, right? And she at least shows here at this point, when you watch her make this move, she's trying to get to the top 2 here. Is she able to do so? No, but she at least is showing sort of a movement to go forward. And at the end, like I said, it gets to be a strung out field. But I like that she took respect, and I like that she gets blinkers on. I thought her debut was very impressive at Keeneland. Certainly not easy to win on debut, especially there in the springtime. But, she faced a tough group last time.
And Whit Waterstrand's likely going to be a strong favorite in this race. She did win the Grade 3 Mazarine over this course and distance as a 2-year-old, and she really looked good in the race we showed you early on, where she was able to beat Sabatini. She just sort of settled near the back. Patrick got her to the outside, and just basically was a ridden-out finish. If she runs that number again, they're all running for second.
Absolutely. And I think looking at the number that she showed in her first start since returning to Woodbine, that's strong. Look at her 2-turn race last year. And I think in a field where others, at least locally, they have something to show around 2 turns, or this is going to be their first test, she's at least proven. And I just think it comes down to her post in here, the trips that she's gotten. She has that tactical early foot to sit the trip and make the late run. And she does look pretty tough in this field.
Well, let's take a look at our top pick for the Grade 3 Selene, kicking off a 20-cent pick 5. Whit Waterstrand's last race really convinced me that she's okay. You're going 7-3. Creval d'Oro, interesting horse in here. I really think at a decent price.
I think so too. I mean, anything close to an 8-1 morning line, I think if you get that come post time, it's a fair price. She's really put it together in those 2 of her last 3. And I just think, can she switch that form over to the synthetic? We could see her maybe take a step forward, and I'm always looking for value.
And I'm curious to see what Sabatini does from the inside, expecting her to break. If Red Samurai wants the lead, maybe they rate back, get to the outside, and try to get the jump on everybody turning into the stretch. Really nice race. Some nice fillies in the Grade 3 Selene. 7-3-6-1 for Ashley, 7-1-3-6 for me. Good luck.